Hello and thanks for joining us for another edition of Northwest Newsweek. I'm Mitchell Ringos. Well, there's been a major development in the case of Alyssa Turnbull. OPP announced Wednesday that they have recovered the remains of the young woman who went missing in Nipigon over 3 years ago and had been presumed dead. Turnbull was last seen in Nipigon in March of 2020. She was 26 years old at the time, and police say her remains were located on October 25th in a remote area of Kaministiquia. OPP have informed Turnbull's family of the discovery.
At least they know where she is. They know to some extent what has happened to her, and they're able to move on and give her the farewell that she deserves, the burial that she deserves. But I don't think any of us can really understand what that family must still be going through.
61-year-old Brian Seuss and 29-year-old Nick Seuss from Nipigon were both arrested in the summer of 2022 and charged with committing an indignity to human remains and obstructing of justice. A third person is believed to be associated with Turnbull's death, but police say that person is now deceased and OPP will not release his name. Then on Friday, the two suspects in the Turnbull case appeared in court in Thunder Bay. Brian and Nick Seuss both pleaded guilty to indignity charges, but they won't serve any more jail time after striking a plea deal and leading police to Turnbull's remains. Her family was at the courthouse on Friday afternoon, where details of the plea deal were revealed. Lee Noonan was there.
Nick and Brian Seuss have pled guilty, explaining in detail their role in transporting the remains of Alyssa Turnbull after her death 3.5 years ago. They will be released today with time served. Justice Elaine Burton was in tears as she accepted the joint sentencing submission, calling it manifestly unfit, but also saying it was acceptable in light of Nick Seuss's cooperation.
That joint submission was arrived at after extensive discussion with the family and investigators. The aim of that joint submission was to bring Alyssa Turnbull home to her family, and that is what has been accomplished. Without the cooperation of Nicholas Seuss, police would likely have never located Alyssa Turnbull's remains, despite their exhaustive efforts to do so. The Crown is duty-bound to honor its agreement with defense.
Alyssa's family read into the record their victim impact statements, moving statements expressing anger and excruciating pain, but also painting a picture of Alyssa as a young woman who was vibrant, full of humor, full of life. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The Deer Lake First Nation is now confirming that 3 people died and several other people were injured in a household fire on Sunday. The chief and council has issued a media release saying the bodies of the 3 victims were flown out for official identification on Wednesday. One person with severe injuries was airlifted to a hospital in Thunder Bay. Investigators with the fire marshal's office have completed the on-scene portion of their probe into the cause of the fire, but no determination has been made at this time. RockTech Lithium is working with the Red Rock Indian Band and the BMI Group on a major development in Red Rock. The parties are conducting an analysis to transform the former Nordipac mill site into a key component of Ontario's electric vehicle supply chain. A memorandum of understanding outlining the next steps was signed on Friday. Josh Morano was there and has this report.
RockTech Lithium is a German company with a mission to produce lithium hydroxide for electric vehicle batteries. Friday, they signed a memorandum of understanding with the BMI Group and Red Rock Indian Band to explore a potential lithium processing plant where the former pulp and paper mill used to reside. RockTech CEO Dirk Harbeke says their Georgia Lake lithium deposit is just an hour away near Beardmore. The company is just about ready to go ahead with a full operating mine there, and he thinks this site at Red Rock fits perfectly into their plans.
We have decided a few months ago that after our first lithium converter in Germany, we want to build our next lithium converter here in Ontario. And we have screened a few locations, and we really like this location here at Red Rock. It is very close to our future mining site, and we feel really welcome by the community and by all stakeholders here.
Harbeke adds that the converter could begin construction as early as 2025. Paul Veldman with the BMI Group and Chief Marcus Hardy of the Red Rock Indian Band have been working on creating a deep water port in Red Rock and have been talking with RockTech over the last year. Veldman says his partnership with the First Nation was a top priority when signing this deal, as he notes the amount of jobs that will be created for the entire area.
When you think about infrastructure, loading trucks, unloading trucks, truck drivers, there's about an approximate 400,000 ton of goods on an annual basis that would come into this and out of this process. So each truck, each rail car needs to be driven, loaded, unloaded, each vessel. We hope to, obviously, a big part of this theme is reinstating the port. Those are all meaningful jobs.
Extremely excited. I mean, it's bringing hope to the communities, and we're actually moving ahead and taking steps to make this whole project come into fruition.
It's going to be great. So it's great for family life. It's obviously great for the community, for all the businesses in town. It'll attract more business. So it's it's a win-win for Red Rock.
Veldman says his company will begin working on the railway system as of this Monday, and if everything goes according to plan, the port will be completed by August 2024. Josh Morano, TBT News.
Thunder Bay City Council has pushed back a decision on whether to endorse a proximity principle for high-level nuclear waste in the region. It came after a demonstration out front of City Hall organized by those against a potential nuclear waste repository near Ignace. The council now wants to consult with those groups before making a decision. Celios Bellos reports.
A protest prior to Monday's City Council meeting, where a group of concerned citizens voiced their opposition to transporting nuclear waste through the region.
Hey, ho, ho. Nuclear waste has got to go.
Around 50 people were involved in the demonstration ahead of a council discussion on a potential proximity principle for high-level nuclear waste. The principle would dictate keeping nuclear waste as close to its point of generation as possible.
How dangerous this could be, the risk magnified times the frequency.
Peter Lang with Nuclear Free Thunder Bay talked about what he sees as considerable risks that would come with transporting waste through the region.
Freight train lost its cargo.
The seriousness of something as radioactive as that. So you ask anybody, MTO, OPP, there will be truck accidents. There's no doubt about it.
During the meeting, though, a surprise referral from Councillor Andrew Folds, who wanted more consultation with the groups represented at the protest before making a decision.
Set up that meeting, and then it'll come back to us and we can have that debate. I don't think we should have the debate 2 nights. I think we can maybe do this and then we'll come back and have that more broad discussion later.
This decision comes as the Nuclear Waste Management Organization has shortlisted a site near Ignace and Wabigoon Lake Nation for waste disposal, with a decision expected next year.
We've been shipping nuclear material around the world for more than 50 years, more than 5 million kilometers, and there's never been an accident that's caused a release of radiation.
The NWMO's Vince Ponca attended the meeting and stressed safety as his organization's top priority. Ponca vows that the project will move forward not only with consent from Ignace and Wabigoon Lake, but the region as a whole.
I'd imagine we have a hard time moving forward if Dryden wasn't excited about this project and if Thunder Bay wasn't excited about this project, right? It's not just the siting communities. It's really, even in terms of labor demand, we're going to need to draw from the entire region.
The NWMO is expected to make a decision on their nuclear waste burial site by late 2024. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
Northern Ontario communities have been facing profound physician shortages, resulting in many northern emergency departments at risk of closure. The Ontario Medical Association is urging the province to resolve the issue and develop a physician workforce strategy. Jessica Clement has the details.
Regional doctors are calling on the Ontario government to develop a physician workforce strategy to ease the doctor shortage in northern and rural Ontario.
In many of our communities, we only have family physicians, and they are supporting all of the care delivery in the hospital setting. That has meant for many of our physicians that they have needed to make the choice between being in the office, seeing patients who need ongoing care delivered by someone who knows them well, or being in the emergency department to keep that service open.
Dr. Sarah Newberry from Marathon was one of 3 regional physician leaders brought onto a virtual panel hosted by the Ontario Medical Association to discuss unique healthcare challenges and service gaps in Northern Ontario. Newberry says the region is spread out over a huge geographical area, which creates challenges for delivery of care and accessibility. Dr. Laurel Laxo from Sioux Lookout says the doctor shortage has hit her community hard.
We are currently funded for twice as many physician full-time equivalents than we currently have. And so the impact of that is felt across our region. Many patients tell me that primary care is so difficult to access in Sioux Lookout that it essentially no longer exists. My personal family practice has a wait time of about 4 to 5 months to see me. Of course, the gold standard would be less than 2 weeks.
During the panel, the OMA suggested solutions, which included the government working with the OMA to create a comprehensive physician workforce strategy, creating a provincial pool of locums, and more support networks and hubs in remote and isolated communities. However, Northern Ontario School of Medicine Dean Dr. Sarita Verma says the shortage issue and access to healthcare concerns will not go away until someone takes charge.
There are so many entities involved from multiple agencies and an attempt to consolidate everything under Ontario Health and the Ministry of Health and the regulatory agencies and now, of course, the Medical Association. And when we want to have a conversation at NOSMU, we have to often have 50 people in the room. So the one thing we can do in Northern Ontario is identify who's in charge, who is the authority, and who is the jurisdiction to make the change.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Coming up after the break, Waman Lake First Nation officials celebrate their connection to the Watay transmission line. Waman Lake First Nation is the latest community to be connected to the provincial power grid through the Watay Power Project. A celebration was held on Monday, marking the 7th remote First Nation to be electrified by Watay. Lee Noonan was there.
The new transformer station in Waman Lake First Nation went live on September 21st. The community celebrated the end of their reliance on diesel with a blessing of the station and a community feast. According to Waman Lake Chief Sam Mamakwa, they had needed upwards of 1.2 million liters of fuel a year to keep the old diesel generator running. A huge expense for the First Nation, particularly with the winter road season growing shorter.
We have to make plans. We have to make plans that we have enough financial resources to bring in fuel to keep the generating system going. Now we don't have that concern. There's no concern at all.
Despite the strain on community resources, Mamakwa emphasized the importance of community control of the utility. He's happy the First Nation has a stake in Wataynikaneyap Power, and he's looking forward to a day when the company will be 100% First Nations owned.
Our elders have always encouraged us to start looking at building a solid foundation for our future generation. And one of those things is through ownership of any major infrastructure or development that may happen in our homeland. And because we need to establish something for our children and grandchildren.
Waman is one of 24 First Nations that together own 51% of Watanakaneyap. Fortis, a BC utility company, holds the other 49% interest. Kennequinash says their goal is for Wate to be completely First Nation owned in 25 years. For now, the hydro connection means Waman has the capacity to power new developments and can avoid the outages that Mamakwa says were common with diesel power.
It could be because the generating system went into mechanical issues, or it could be because the fuel has to be flown in.
Mamakwa says the first hydro bills have already arrived here in Waman, and they're not as high as they used to be, something the community is pretty grateful for. Lee Noonan, TPT News.
This week, the Ford government voted down an NDP motion that would have recognized indigeneity and colonialism as determinants of health for First Nations people. The motion was put forward by Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa.
No one in this House can know the toll that these determinants of health have on your mental health, on your physical health, on your spiritual health. Generations of our people have lived under these conditions.
During the initial debate last Thursday, Mamakwa cited statistics from the Sioux Lookout First Nations Health Authority, which showed that in 2021, First Nation members in that area visited the ER for mental health issues at 14 times the provincial rate and at 16 times the rate and for self-harm and suicidality. Indigenous Affairs Minister Greg Rickford, who has experienced working as a nurse in remote First Nations, joined his Conservative colleagues in voting against the motion on Monday. Before the vote, he recognized the tragic impact of suicide but criticized Mamakwa on procedure.
There's a good way of working through the legislature with respect to those private members' bills, and when you want to put a report on the table for us to consider and debate, maybe put it out a little bit sooner than one day before the motion is tabled.
According to the NDP, their report was available 4 days prior to the vote, although the legislature was not sitting on 3 of those days. The 2023 forest fire season has officially come to an end. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry says the Northwest region saw more wildfires than average and significantly more than last year's very slow fire season. Lee Noonan has the details.
The Northwest saw 476 forest fires this year, which burned more than 324,000 hectares of forest. That's a lot more than last year when there were only 82 small fires covering 113 hectares. And it was significantly less than 2021 when 989 fires burned over a record-setting 779,686 hectares in the region. The fires in the Northwest accounted for 73% of the total 441,000 hectares which burned across the province this year. That amount was nearly twice the 10-year provincial average of 163,000 hectares. Fire Information Officer Chris Marchand says there were very few social impacts or threats to property this year, other than from one fire just a few kilometers north of Cat Lake First Nation, which was safely brought under control.
When we compare it to a season like 2021, when we had as many as 7 communities evacuated, this year we saw far fewer problematic fires that were affecting populations on the landscape.
The most important human impact of wildfires this year was smoke, much of which drifted in from other provinces. Marchand says more than 600 Ontario fire rangers and other staff were deployed to assist Western provinces, with the Northwest receiving help as well from Mexico. Firefighting efforts were concentrated near population areas, while many of the large fires in the region were monitored but left to burn.
Fire has a role within the boreal ecosystem. So when those fires aren't posing a threat to people, to lives, to property, to infrastructure, there is that opportunity and that flexibility to let them do their work on the landscape as they have for millions of years.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Canada's first ever First Nation Premier was celebrating his roots in northwestern Ontario last weekend. A number of area Indigenous leaders were also there to congratulate Wab Kinew, who was elected Premier of Manitoba in early October. He's a member of the Ojibways of Onigaming and spent much of his youth in the Kenora area. Onigaming Chief Jeff Kopanis and his community hosted the gathering last Saturday to celebrate the historic achievement. Kinew was greeted with cheers and plenty of smiling faces. The new premier then gave a speech when he showed his appreciation to the community, dignitaries, and the children and youth of Onigaming. Coming up after the break, the public swimming pool in Marathon is closed and it's not going to reopen. The town of Marathon is pinning its hopes on getting funding for a new active living center after having to permanently close the municipal pool. Council made the call back in August to close their pool for good after an engineering report showed problems with the ceiling joists. The town's arena is also in rough shape, according to Mayor Rick Dumas. He's hoping to secure provincial or federal funding to replace the aging infrastructure. The new facility has been in the works for years and would include a theater as well as a new pool and arena. The project would cost an estimated $56 million.
We're really in need, and the fact that we had to shut our pool down was not a good thing for the community. It's a long, cold winter in Marathon without a swimming pool. I personally use it a lot, and my grandkids, and you know, it's one of those facilities that we need it in the north, and we have it, and we want to continue to have it in the future. So obviously it'll take a couple years to get the new facility built, but we need to get that first phase of funding done so we can go to tender, and hopefully that'll happen all in the new year.
There are a number of wish list items the township would like to see included in the active living center, including a dog park and bowling alley, which would increase the cost to an estimated $65 million. Dumas admits the project is not likely to be funded right away. Progress is well underway on a new water treatment plant and waterworks at a First Nation near Marathon. The long-awaited project is Bigtigong-Nishinabeg is expected to be up and running by the end of next year. The new system will draw directly from Lake Superior instead of relying on well water. Daniel Machano, Bigtigong's capital housing director, explains that nearly 6 kilometers of pipe will run between the treatment plant and the lake to keep the water intake away from the silt at the mouth of the Pick River. It's an ambitious project he wasn't sure would ever be approved.
We first received notice that the community was receiving a new water plant in a tune of the $58 million mark. We were, again, ecstatic. We still couldn't believe it, right? Reading the emails and, of course, receiving the phone calls from the people further on up the line. It was almost surreal, right? Knowing that we did it.
We were at a stage with the water project where we were starting to get more of boil water advisories because we would get capacity. We'd be at capacity. So we needed to look at expanding even for our current infrastructure that we have. This water project that we have will provide safe, reliable drinking water for generations to come.
Majano says the new treatment plant will be able to handle 4 to 5 times the volume of the current plant with improved flow rates. He says it's a necessity for the growing community, and the new system has an expected lifespan of 50 years. The Ontario Ministry of Labour is investigating an unusual workplace accident involving a portable outhouse. It happened Tuesday on a highway construction site near Dorian. A mechanic working for Terra North Construction was inside a porta potty when a water truck backed up too far and crushed the outhouses against a sea container. The man apparently suffered a serious leg injury. The Superior North EMS provided initial treatment before the man was airlifted to Thunder Bay Regional by Orange helicopter. Terra North officials declined to comment, and OPP say the incident is now in the hands of the Labour Ministry. An inspector has visited the job site and 6 orders have been issued to the company while the investigation continues. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you right back here next week.